I would pick individuals like Webster Tarpley or Max Kaiser, Gerald Celente, men and economists who have already come out publicly and stated that they realize the fraud. I mean, these are the guys that I learned from. You know, it's only the value. It's only the fact that we have the internet that any of this information is even available to us, and we've got the Cybersecurity Act that's going to attack that. We are going to find Judge Napolitano from Fox News is one of the few guys on that channel that I still trust. None from the other. Kramer, anybody listening to Kramer, you're out of your mind, because that guy is a financial terrorist as far as you know the rest of them concerned.
We should point out Celente's blog is available on Facebook. I don't see any updates lately, but for folks who'd like to actually read more and see what he's writing about.
G. Edward Griffin is another name that comes to mind. He wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island, and it's actually his 16-point plan in the back of that book is actually a blueprint for what we want to do. With this plan, we're still going to be able to honor our overseas debts, so we won't, you know, anger those guys too much. But we're also going to be overturning the legal tender law, so that the individual will be able to discount the notes. They won't be held to the face value. So if a flood of cash, say, comes in from China, individual sellers will be able to decide how much those notes are really worth. And that's the power of getting back to the gold standard. We have a debt standard. The entire monetary policy of the country is based on a fiat piece of paper that carries invisible, unpayable interest with it. It is a debt bubble that is designed to bankrupt every single man, woman, and child in this country, and that is so that they can bring you under their control. This health care bill is nothing more than a declaration of war on your individual rights and freedoms. You know, a lot of people get sold on this utopia idea of the government's going to save us, the government's going to step in and pay for all of our bills. I'm here to tell you it's not that way. This is just another massive, grotesque, Fedzilla-type bureaucracy that's going to suck the life, the energy, and the money, the production. This is a parasitical group of individuals that run bureaucracies, that run banks, that run off the real manufacturers and the real producers of this country. One of the things that we're going to have to get back to is manufacturing. All the junk that's made in China now needs to be made here. And one of the ways we can do that is during this whole big money mix-up, we can give 0% interest loans to manufacturing.
We have another caller with a 628. You're on WGMD, and just a first name and where you're calling from. Your reply?
Well, basically, the value, there's plenty of silver out there. What's going to happen is the value of an ounce of silver, the value of an ounce of gold is going to skyrocket. That's why we can still stay with, you know, paper-backed certificates as far as day-to-day transactions. I mean, most of our transactions are done with the swipe of a card anyways. But, you know, to get into smaller denominations, yeah, we are going to have to use like silverback certificates. But there's absolutely no reason why we can't stay on the gold and silver, or get back onto the gold and silver standard. That whole idea of there not being enough, that just means that the value of these things, and the value never really changes. In relation to dollars, it does, because you have this super hyperinflation created by the Federal Reserve in combination with the fractional reserve banking.
We'll have more with Doug Campbell coming up. Of course, he's a Constitution Party candidate for U.S. House of Representatives in the state of Delaware. 6:30 in the news is coming up next. This morning, Kaufman ended up on Fox Business Channel.
Oh, yeah?
Boy, I tell you, that guy.
What was he talking about?
They were talking about the bill and, you know, and the last Senate activity on it.
Yeah.
But he got chatting away, and all of a sudden the host said, "So, have you given much thought how that this is going to be difficult to pay for?" And he was so smooth up to that point. he just started. It was like watching Jackie Gleason with the hamada.
Let me tell you something about Kaufman. He knows the banking. He understands it. I've watched him on the floor and talk about it. He understands it, and that's why he couldn't answer that question, because he realizes the financials.
Well, then he paused after he stumbled and said yes, and then he said, "Well, I don't think it's that big a worry." Well, what do you mean it's not a big worry?
Yeah, right. The bankers told him so.
Yeah, he's a law professor, right? That's his background?
I'm not sure. I know he understands finances.
Mike is just the type of guy. He's like your local Rotarian who's a nice guy.
He's the most incompetent guy I've ever seen.
He's good at slapping people on the back and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's not a. How many years has he been over there? And
the fact that he's on the Financial Services Committee is what burns me the most. He's just as much a part of this whole fraud as Barney Frank is.
DuPont's agent in Washington is what he is. Just like Michelle Rollins is going to be DuPont's agent. That's what that's all about.
Yeah.
The powers that be up in Newcastle County want to make sure their own interests are protected.
Yeah.
And, that's
why. Banking interests are all that Delaware has left.
Yeah.
And once, kind of realize that all those banks up there they are 100% feeding off of the scraps that are left of our country and the manufacturing.
Castle has been there. The only reason that he's even getting any attention in the mainstream media anymore is because of the dressing down he took in Georgetown last spring. If it hadn't been for that, I mean, Mike who? I mean, after all those years in Washington, and people still don't know who he is, I had a congressman when I lived in Syracuse named Jim Walsh. 20 years he was in the House. Nobody knew who he was.
Yeah.
If you're there for 20 years and your name doesn't ring a bell with anybody, that tells you right away that the guy's
sliding through, and they just do the bare minimum. They get the money from the corporations they need to get reelected, and they
have a good life after they leave.
Yeah.
It's a club. And once you're in, one of the reasons you saw Cradaville vote no is because Frank needs, 2 terms to get his retirement.
Yeah.
If he was voting yes, he was going to lose, and he wouldn't get the retirement. But since he gets a couple of extra years, he hopes, then he gets the big fat retirement check. Yeah. If that's your whole purpose for serving, we got a problem with that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, the pension is actually small fries compared to the special deals, the lobbyist positions and everything else they get.
Well, look at Daschle. I mean, how much money does he make now? $2.5 million a year?
And he was the one who originally wrote the healthcare legislation. We're gonna have to restrict care, and that's when USA Today came out with that the case for killing Granny article.
Yeah. Well, the other part of this is to watch these people try to squirm and run away from some of the obvious, there are no death panels. I have Obama in an April 28th interview, New York Times Magazine last year, where he doesn't refer to them as death panels, but, I can pull out a dictionary and I can say this defines a death panel.
Yeah.
And the Orwellian language.
The first health care bill they were throwing around had talked about implantable chips on page 1000.